Today we have a special shiur for the upcoming Rosh Hashanah, and we'll try, in the limited time we have, to go through the Tzetlach of Gishtanen, 9 Rosh Hashanahs. We'll make 10 Rosh Hashanahs. The first Rosh Hashanah that we find the first year, Brias Haolam. Actually, it's not the first Brias Haolam. The Olam is machlekes in the Gemara. It's developed is Bashafen geworden. The world was created in Tishrei or in Nisan. But most of Chazalim go according to the Mandahoma that the Olam was never beTishrei. Actually, beElu started Chofei Elu, and the Moilad. This is called the second year Brias Haolam, because the first year Brias Haolam is -1. It's called Moilad Toihu, which is when you learn Hilchas Kiddush HaChodesh, we go back as if even though the Me'iris were not nitla till Yom HaRevi, but Lamaise we go in the retrospect to figure out Vos Volt Given, how would the Moilad look like. It's called Moilad Baharad, and this Moilad was a Moilad of the year. It's called Moilad Toihu. In the 6th day, B'yoyim HaShish of the Brias Haolam, Aleph Tishrei, the world is Nivra B'chofei Elu. Kadosh Baruch Hu turns. Now, I'm going to say over here dozens of midrashim, Pikad Abelazars, Brias Haolam Rabbah, and many Gemaras, but we have a condensed time. We want to go through entire scope. So some of the things I'm not going to mention the Michoel, but every single thing is based and documented in Chazal. Kadosh Baruch Hu is Pona Kadosh Baruch Hu leMalochei Ashores, and he tells him Nase Odom Betzalmeinu Kidmuseinu. Zach durchgerät Nisyaetz steht in Chazal bePamalya Shel Mala Kadosh Baruch Hu, and the creation of Adam started. There's 5 different Gemaras and different Chazal of exactly how this Bria took place. But we take the consensus of most of them. Shor Rishoino Osaf HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ofo Kadosh Baruch Hu collected earth Mikol Katz V'Stevel. Rashi says Shetehek Kol Tosar L'Kvura, in order for a person there was a Gzeira Ki Ofo Me'Ofo Bosa Ve'Lofo Toshuv, in order for the offer to be koiled in the Kvura. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu Tzovar Aforei, he gathered earth Mikol Katz V'Soretz. Shono Shnia Hoirid Geshem. Trotzdem, that ve'odom ayin la'avedis ha'adomo she'ispalul ba'avuro, weiss doch von der Goyen, the Geshem cannot come without Tefillah. There was one yoytze min haklal in Shor Shnia Rosh Hashana Brias Haolam Hoirid HaKadosh Baruch Hu Geshem. There was a rain in the pre-Brias Haolam era. Shlishis in the 3rd hour. Tzoloi Tzuro. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took the offer, he made like a play-doh. Tzor lo yitzuro. Kadosh Baruch Hu made a tzuro. Revis nofach boi neshama. Shor revis HaKadosh Baruch Hu was nefeach neshama in the Odom. Chamishis heikimoi al raglov. The 5th hour of the day of Rosh Hashanah, the first Rosh Hashanah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu heikimoy al raglov. So we have a man who was made out of earth. HaKadosh Baruch Hu needed him lash tzuro heikimoy al raglov. Nofach boi neshama v'kimoy. That's all the 5th hour. By the way, if anybody wants to know, according to the Luach from Chaim Kanievsky, if we go back from the Neitz Hachamo Rosh Hashanah Shnas Aleph Labria, 6:47 a.m. We can go back and we can look at it. 6:47 a.m. and the Shah's Zmanis was on or about an hour and 1.5 minutes. So we're talking about Shor Chamishi Sekim Alagov. It's around 5 hours and 5 minutes. We're talking about on or about 12 o'clock noontime, just a couple minutes before. That's when man stands up. B'tzurosoi b'koimosoi, in the first day of the Bria. B'shoah Shishi steht Pirkei Rablozo ponu amalochim lakodesh Baruch Hu ve'omu asked the Meshayla ma enoish ki tizkerenu. We mentioned the tefillah for Rosh Hashanah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them chochmosoi gdoilo michochmaschem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers Malachei Ashoros, his chochma is gdoilo michochmaschem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took all the balachayim and he's mavi b'fnei Adam, and he asked them Malachim, what name you give to an elephant? They didn't know. A tiger, a lion, nicht gewusst. They Adam gave each one lefi, as they state, al pi shoshoi v'inyonoi. Pi shoshoi v'inyonoi, this is Shalosh al-Maharal. Every animal got a name according to the shirish of the animal v'inyonoi. Uma yeshmecha, state Pirkei Rablozo, Adam kimina Adama lukachti. So Adam Arisha gave himself the name. Adam is a name given by Adam Arisha to himself. Uma Hashem ikroli. Baruch Hu asked Adam Arisha, what name are you giving me? So he told him Adnus, Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud. Trotzdem, the Gemara says, Leimotzinu, Kadosh Baruch Hu, nobody that called Kadosh Baruch Hu Adnus. Adam, Avram Avinu was the first one. They speak about it, the G'dayla Achronim. But the Shem Adnus, Hazadnus, the Shem Adnus was created the very first moment when Adam Arishan was Oimed al Raglov. Kadosh Baruch Hu told them, I put you in Gan Eden. He says, Mipri etzagan toichel, umipri mikol etzagan achol toichel, me'etz hadas, lo yisech k'biyoyim ochlech omen mois tumos, and Beis Hamikdash the ganze Meise, the Dochosh was nitpal, gave Chava, and she was Masio, Adam Arishan to eat, and he gets Adam Arishan gezindigt beyoyim shenel. Kadosh Baruch Hu yoishev al keis hamishpot. First Rosh Hashanah. Kadosh Baruch Hu is yoishev al keis hamishpot, and he says Midas Hadin came. Bra choyvoy. Midas Hadin is telling HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you said beyoyim ochlech mois yumos. Cashing your check. You made a promise. He didn't stand up in the orders. He should expire. Adam Bikesh Rachamim. The first person to ask for Rachamim Bedin was Adam Arishan in Yene Rosh Hashanah. Be'oiso sho, and I'm quoting, Mislabeish HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'midas Rachamim v'kibul tshuvas shel Adam. Now the question is, if he was really mekabel the tshuva, we'll see later in Cain how much he was mekabel his tshuva, but apparently, according to the Pirkei Rablozo, Weist Ois HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mekabel his tshuva, and they made some kind of a loophole. Steht doch, ki b'yoyim ochlech mois tumos. So doch da Apostel doch der Melech sagt in Tilim, ki elef shonim beinecho keyoyim esmel. So they took the day, which is a 24-hour day, and they converted it to the Yom Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. 1,000 years, Adam Rishon give 70 years in Matone to David HaMelech, and he dies 930 years later. Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu le'odom. Mi'ato ato semel le'bonecho v'le'doires haboim. Kishem shebeyoyim zi nigzar dincho, kach beyoyim ze midei shono eishe ve'odun bedin tzedek l'chol boi oim. So you want to know what are we sitting here, Rosh Hashanah was mit davent? This is we perpetuate the erste din Torah HaKadosh Baruch Hu was done in Odom, gezindik beyoyim shenivro, and that was the first Rosh Hashanah in history. Nicht as a poshut. Because if I go weiter, and 40 years later, okay, Doido Machleikas is 3 different Chazals, okay, but I'm going to go with the Chazal. Some people say that Odom, that Cain and Abel were Neilad Bo'isa Yoim, and the whole story of Cain and Abel also happened in the first day of the Bria. I say it's ein Chazal. Pirkei Rablozo weist that Cain and Abel, the story took place 40 years later. Cain and Abel, the story took place Rosh Hashanah b'shnas mem lebrias Haolam. Shtei the Goyen, Vayove Cain mipri ha'adomo mincho la'Hashem, mipri ha'adomo mincho la'Hashem me'apeiros harekuvim. Hevel brought Michael b'itzainoi, he brought a fat animal. Cain, not only did he bring a vegetarian gift, he takes verfeulte Frucht. Peres Rekuvim. So the Goyen, steht nigmor in Rosh Hashanah in Daf Yud Aleph, Omer Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Kol Maaseh Bereishis B'koimosom Nivru. Everything that was created, the Gemara says, Par ben Yoime Koru Par, Rabbi Shimon Hashem, steht in Gemara, V'titav Hashem Yishoyer Par Makrin Mafris. The Par of Adam Rishon was Noile B'tzuros, so he was like 3 years old, because Par had been Sholish, he was 3 years old. So everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu created was B'tzuros Nivra. It wasn't a growth procedure, not for the fruits, not for the vegetables, not for the mammals, not for the balachayim, but it was nivra, the bekoimosei nivra. So how does he have pseilus? How does he have verfeulte Frucht? Zokter, I mean, bringt us from the Likutei Agra. I don't know how falezach, but it's printed up in the Likutei Agra. It says that. They used to, Medrash Tanchum says, Omer Rav Yitzchok, Oyu Zoyrim Shana Achas, Voyu Oyso Tvu Al Arboim Shana. In Bishas Brias Haolam, they used to plant, and the fruit, the produce, used to be sufficient enough for 40 years. And he says, Targum Yonason Ben Uziel says, he brought Korban Bikurim, steht doch Bikurim, ja, the Heintige Parsha Gelam Bikurim. Cain brought a Korban Bikurim, the Erste Peres. So where does he have verfeulte Frucht? They had to wait 40 years. So the Mekoyer of 40 years is the fact that he brought the verfeulte Frucht and he brought Bikurim. He brought from the second crop. He didn't bring from the Erste Peres that Kadosh Baruch Hu made, but he brought from the second crop. The second crop is after Maaseh Bereishis, and those can be verfeult in the selbe Tag. As I state, B'Shem Talmidei Agro, that's what happened. But L'maaseh, Cain, Vayisha Hashem el Cain el Hevel Michos el Cain Michos L'Isho, Cain otach. A gewaltige Kine, he started fighting. Hevel was stronger, as I state in Midrashim, and Asach starker than Cain. And when Yodah Shel Hevel was al Yoine, he was choking him, he's trying to cry to him, he says, I promise you, I'm never going to touch you, leave me alone, los mi ropet. And Hevel lets him go. He bangs him up, state in ganze Chazal. How did he bang him up? He managed to kill his own brother. And he's trying to run away, like any Baal Aveir is trying to run away. And then he hears a koil, Ey Hevel Avi, Achicho, and say, Yodati Hashemer, Rochi Anoichi, I'm not a Shemer. Tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells, called me Achicho, Zoyakim Elo Min Adoma, and the Oynesh is Novanod Tiyebaretz. This happens on Rosh Hashanah, year number 40, the Brias Haolam. Cain starts crying, says, Gogol Aveinim Min Soy, please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, forgive me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was maskim. He gave him a tshuva, he gave him a Cain, and he said, you're not going to get killed. We're going to downgrade your Einish. Now, in this Chazal state, Cain goes out and he meets Odom HaRishon. He meets Odom HaRishon, and he tells Odom HaRishon, was sie gewende Mishpat, Poga Odom HaRishon beKain. I'm reading you Lashon Chazal. Omar Manasseh bedimcho, Omar osisi tshuva v'nispashalti. I made a deal, a plea, a bargain. I made a plea bargain with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nispashalti bedim. Omar Odom HaRishon, kach godel koicho shel tshuva, posach ve'omar mizmor shir l'yom HaShabbos. So we know Chazal mizmor shir HaShabbos, Odom was nivra on Friday, and the mizmor shir l'yom HaShabbos is the mizmor shir that he said b'yom shenivra. And according to some Chazal, the whole story with Cain happened the first one. But according to this Midrashim, Cain, the story happened the 40th year. The Medrash says that Tshuva is moil of all Chatoim. Besides, Avi Dezor Gilarais Shlichus Domim. Man of Eisman, steht doch, a Medrash in Tilin, Vateshav, Eno Ish Hadako. Dako is Rosh Teves Domim, Shlichus Domim, Chof is Kfire, that's Avi Dezor, and Aleph is Eishesish, Avi Dezor Gilarais Shlichus Domim, Vateshav Einish, Sido Vateshav Einish. Kadosh Baruch Hu accepts the Tshuva. But Adako, only to this Gimel Averos Chamuz. Azay, this is a Rebbeinu Shashai B'Tzivot. Azay vi Odom HaRishon was Chayte given a pay given Ed Hadas. So it was Chayfe Beiker, and the Tshuva, Vosido Tshuva, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Cain that there is a tshuva and gimel chamuris and shfichas domim, so Adam Arishon, meiradik, kenov ma tshuva echet, af avodah zorah, koifer beikar. Und steht doch in Gemara in Shabbos, kol Hashem eres HaShabbos, afilu oved avodah zorah, kedoir enoish, moichalin loi, is Pasach ve'oma mizbashil HaShabbos. Das ist ein Wort von der Brias Haolam. That his mizbashi was the tikkun. Shem HaShabbos, it's auch untergenommen, in Meile, and his aveira of avodah zorah, koifer beikar, eat nes adas, and when a pagam from koifer beikar, he got the tshuva. I'd like to go, okay, this is the two first Rosh Hashanahs in a very early stage. Aleph Brias Haolam, Mem Brias Haolam. I'd like to go, zoom, fast forward, 2008 Brias Haolam. Okay. 2008 Brias Haolam, Kodesh Baruch Hu is sitting bedin, like he does the last 2008 years. And he says, Kum maloch hashoros mitatayim. When Avram went to Grar, and Avimelech, Otzar kol rechem, everybody became Akorim ve'Akoris. They couldn't have any children. Came Avram Avinu with his tefillah, and it was moyel that Kodesh Baruch Hu took off the gzeir. Omu aloche hashoros HaKodesh Baruch Hu. Im shomata tfilosoi al anshe Avimelech, lo tishma tfilosoi al atzmoi. As there is a correspondence between HaKodesh Baruch Hu and Maloche Hashoros in the year 2008. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, "Du bist gerecht." Sends his Malachim say, "Tzocha kosoro, vos psa velter, al ben mea sho yivoled, achrei b'loisi oisel yedno, she's 90 years of age." Aber steht in the Gemara, in Rosh Hashana daf Yud Aleph, beRosh Hashana nifkedo soro. beRosh Hashana nifkedo soro. Zogt Rashi, was meint beRosh Hashana nifkedo soro? Lashon Rashi, in Rosh Hashana daf Yud Aleph. More starts in Yudam Beis, but Rashi is in Yud Aleph and Yud Aleph. Zogt Rashi, bo zichroino letoiva v'nigzo alei eroyin. For the Marsha, what do you mean nigzo alei eroyin? Every woman is going to have a baby that year is nigzo alei eroyin Rosh Hashana. What's it nigzo alei eroyin? Lashon Rashi, what's it mean nifkedo soro? Zogt Rashi, bo zichroinom letoiva v'nigzo alei eroyin. Yisogun ale by Sora was nisaba b'oisayoyim. Some seifers are shtikul teir. By Sora, by everybody else was nisaba. But somebody is going to be nisaba l'Rosh Hashanah. Yizechet l'maiseh be dezelbe gzeira. But by Rosh Hashanah nifke the Sora means to say that she got pregnant with Yitzchak. Yitzchak was born in Tesvav Nisan. That's Eich Tagemore. It was Neila l'Shiva, Neila l'Shiva Yerelas Mekutoin. So it's really 6.5 months. Unless you're going to go like Yene Girse in Radal, Yene Yov from Leidas Yitzchak was a Shana Muberes. The Pashtas most Chazal, it wasn't Shana Muberes, it was a regular year. Shail Bechlal, so when Yibur Shana found the Pasha and Akedah and Yitzhak, Yetachem Midroshim, there was a Pasha Yibur Shana, Yedu Adiva Biskarov, as he given Pasha from Yibur, noch Falmaten Tereich. But from deswegen, either Yitzchak was Neulad Betesvov Nisan, but the Yibur from Sora was in Leil Rosh Hashanah. So this is in the year 2008. I would like to move fast forward. Akedah and Yitzhak. When does Akedah and Yitzhak happen? So Rashi says in the beginning of Parshas told us, Vayi Yitzchak ben Arboim Shana, Bekachta Yesrivko, Zogt Rashi, Sharek Shebo Avro Be'ar Moria Nisbasa Shenoldo Rivko, V'Yitzchak Hoyo ben Lamezayin Shana, Sharei Boi Beperek Mesa Soro, U'Shenolad Yitzchak Ada Akedah, Shemesa Soro, Lamed Zayin Shon, ובצדיק Oisor שנולד יצחק, ובקוף חוב זין שמייסו, שנאמר ויחי סורו מהשון בעצם שוב ושבע. הרי ליצחק למד זין שונו, ובוי בפרק נולד רבקו. המתין לו עד שיתו יראו לביע גימל שון ונסו. It says ויצחק בן 40 שנה. Yitzchak was 37. Why? Because if Sarah died by the Xer for that Akedah, if that really happened at the same time, so Sarah was 127 minus 90 is 37. Yitzchak is 37. And he was nisbasa by the Akedah, hine yoldo milko. State Rashi, the whole parsha was need because of Rivka. So Rivka had to be 3 years old, should be Rui Labia, and that's why Yitzchak ben Arboim Shana from 37 to 43 years, as a state in Rashi. Teisus in Yevomes daf Samachala from the Beis, state in Teisus. The Gemara comes, Yitzchak was in the Akedah only 26 years of age. Nish v'Rashi, Yitzchak was 37, Yitzchak was 26 years old. As a state in Teisus, Favos. Because the Gemara says a Kohen Gadol has to take a Besula, and the Gemara says Besula has to be a Naira, and a Naira is the Chol HaPoches. We know a Naira is 12 to 12 and a half. She has to be a Besula. Shenema, Shteit Barivko, Besulov, a Naira Besulov, Toiv Asmar v'ish lo yado. So behechrech, Friktesis Teime, the Ocha Mashma Rivko Naira Oiso, ובסדר אוילום, in the Brias Hatanya בהדיה שעושה בשלוש שנים שנוסו יצחוק. ואי אפשר להגיע עד התניא או יצחוק שנקד גם במזבח בשיבו ושלישים. בפרק נוילוד רבקו, ראשון תייסס. וכסיב היצחוק בן 40 שנה נמצא שעושה בת ג' והרב רב שמואל חוסיד משפירו, הוכיח שעושה בס י"ד. מדתניא בספרי ווב זוגש נשאים שובס וכחושיב כהוס ורבקו וכהוס חיו קל"ג שון וכסיב בקרו ומויסה בס י"ד שונה שנשוא אז החשבון מכוון. וכשנולד יעקב ויוסף בס ל"ד ויורג יעקב היה בן צדיק 9 מעשר רבקו. הרי קל"ג שהרי שנסברך הוא היה בן סמך ג'. I'm not going to go into the ganze sophisticated Feature Shiur, but Taisus brings Nish v'Brias the Seder Olam Rabba, bringt Rab Shmuel Chosid Mishpira Azeh, Taisus in Yevam Samach Aleph Beis. The Yitzchok was 26 years of age by the Akedah. Mimele, she was 14. As David the Sugis Gemara, she had to be over 12. The more brings a raya. Can go to take a psula from Yena Pasuk for Rivka when she got married. So she had to be. Taisa says she was 14, and Yitzchak was 26 years of age. Yitzchak was Habayim Shad the Apostle. Can't fight City Hall. So if Yitzchak was 26, Shenesah, she was 14 years old. So we have a machlekes when the Akedah took place. If the Akedah took place, Somuch Mamesh delayed us Rivka. Sarah died 127 to Siklo. And Sarah died 37 years after Yitzchak was born. Shaila's notes, Akedas Yitzchak Otashayches to Vayuchai Sor. The Parsha of Smuchas, Rashi makes Smuchas, and they state in Brias in the Seder Olam Rabba. Ober, Teisa state, Zok Teisas, V'tzorch Lema, the Midrosha is Chalukim Zelze. So machlekes. So we have a machlekes, Midrosha Chalukim Zelze, if Yitzchak, besides the Akedah, the Akedah Yitzchak, since it was Beis Alofim Pehei, I'm trying to say 2085 the Brias Haolam, or was 2 Alofim Ayin Daled 2074. If it was 11 years earlier, Yitzchak was 26, it was not 37. Iye Mashiach. But Akedah Yitzchak was after Tog Fun Rosh Hashana. Was in the high. steht doch boah sot picket ab los lifna kodesh boch um rebene shel matoch inat zok ze be shono wo os su do gdel lichveit khov meloch ve roiz nim khshuv oil mizmin mikol asud lo ito khavrom lahakri lo khaf lo korbanech avrom avinu is sitting and making a suda and Rosh Hashana suda Rosh Hashana and for the ganze suda is not giving you even Oma kodesh boch the kol asuda lo yosel avu bnoi ve'av bnoi ze yakriv l'kshiyitztam. And again, Semaise with Yitzchak and Ishmael, and Rosh Boch achat v'omael kach l'chos binchos yichitcha shavafta es Yitzchak alavesen. He says, I have 2 sons, I love them both. Yichitcha beina yichidim de yichid love and then he tells Avram Avinu to go. Avram Avinu goes, and he tells him the Sultan meets him on the way. He says, Vu geiste, he says to David, and what are you taking the issue? Hates him. He tells Yitzchak, probiert einzureden Yitzchak, it's a bluff, he's going to kill you. And Yitzchak says, my father knows what he's doing, whatever my father. He's koifis him on the Mizbeach, and he's starting to go, kommen the sok, nin meloike no, over Avrin Atzavor b'mayim, Mama Ribono Shel Olam, steht weiter, nin meloike har, kriegt the har, and he wants to make that. He comes, he puts, Lemaise state that Vayekoid es Yitzchak b'noi vayosem es l'mizbeach vayishlach es ha'ma'acheles omu maloche ha'shores nishbato loi ki b'Yitzchak yikor l'cho zera Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu gleich Avrom vayomer hineni. He says es mosai loi ochel brisi umotzai, this is the Lashon HaMedrash, umotzai sfosai le'ashane, the bris for ki b'Yitzchak yikor l'cho zera. I told you only achte, you only have to bring him up, otherwise you don't have to kill him. The ganze Teire שני כסובים מהמחקשים זה, הכל זה משהו שהכריע ביניהם, ותשתקל from Chaim, was מזוך דיבר, but in any event. Kadosh Baruch Hu told them, I want you to be Shem Shekovashtem. We know the whole Rosh Hashanah, he says, Kishem shekovash Avram Avinu is Rachamov, and he wanted to mark his egg and his son, that his Baruch should be kovish Rachamov Aleim. Anyhow, Lamaisa, he took the aisle, he was the aisle, and Vosater Giton me the aisle. State, he took the two karnaim of the aisle. The Keren Hayemonis, he saved from Mount Tereh. Vayikol HaShefer, the other psukim was mizokt als Rosh Hashanah. Mount Tereh was not a Rosh Hashanah. But the Shefer was Maroginim from the Isle and the Akedah, which happened, it took place on Rosh Hashanah. The Shefer Hayemoni was for Mount Tereh, והשפר השמאלי שתית והויו ביום ההוא יתוקע בשפר גדול ובואו האויב די מארץ השוב הנדוחם מארץ מצרים וישתחוו להשם בהר הקודש בירושלים. This will be used, the second shefer from the Akedah. So we have two designated with a Maisa of Akedah Yitzhak. Now I'm going to tell you something that nobody heard before. Ganz so was jetzt da, keiner noch nicht gehört. When was the bracha of Yitzchak to Yankiv? The bracha to Yitzchak to Yankiv was in the year 2171, the Brias Haolam, either 86 years after the Maaseh from the Akedah according to the Brias Haolam, or 97 years according to the Beis Hamikdash. The Goyen state. Now, this is not a Goyen in Likutim, this is not the Goyen in the Zoyar, this is not a Goyen in Safra that's new, so this is a Goyen of Shulchan Aruch. In Hilchis Rosh Hashanah. I mean, late, you read Hilchis Rosh Hashanah, you don't see the Goyen. Steht in Goyen Azeh. Yodua has the brochis. When was the brochis from Yitzchak to Yankiv? When was Yankiv? So everybody says, Afikoim and Teiref, from Reb Shualeib, mit Arba Koises, mit Matzes, Chad Gadye, mit der Agode, mit Verkäufen der Afikoimen und Stillen der Afikoimen. Sagt der Goyen Azeh. Yodua, שהברוכס ניתנו בראש השנה. זה שתית נגויים. ואיסה בזויר הקודש, if somebody wants, you can go right outside. Zoyar HaKodesh, Parshas Emor, if you have their old Zoyar, we grew up on, Daf Tzadik Tes. Beyoyme de Rosh Hashanah kori Yitzchak le'Esov, ve'omar le'tzudo li'tzayit ve'asa li matamim. Ve'nichnas Yankev ve'not ala broches. Zog de Goyen. Hatam she'oichlim tapuach beleil Rosh Hashanah. Why do we eat apple b'dvash? So, as many chadorim as you're in Lakewood, you're going to have gilsa. So they're going, Atam she'oichlim tapuach beleil Rosh Hashanah. Ki az omar Yitzchak liyankev re'ei reach pni kereach sode asher bircho Hashem umetargeminam kechakal tapuchim. So they're going, the reason why we eat a apple with honey on Rosh Hashanah, because the brochos was Yankev had gekrogen from the tate from Yitzchak, the brochos took place on Leil Rosh Hashanah. Nish kim Pesach and Golsh. Yodua. And since the begodim that he had, Chakal Tapuchim, steht doch Reach Bnike Reach Asode, so ungeschmeckt from beautiful apples, so to commemorate the Tapuchim was given b'shas the broches, that's why we eat, steht in Goyen, nicht in Midrashim, that's why we eat Tapuach b'dvash. And I'm going to tell you furthermore, steht in Reb Tzodek, this is Reb Tzodek HaKoyen, he says like this, when was Yitzchak born? Yitzchak was born on Tezvov ben Nisan, Sagamore. Not Sagamore, Yitzchak born to them. Mazoive, Pocho Nishmosei, because Baruch Hu gave him back the Neshama. When did he give him back the Neshama? But Akedah, when he gave him the Akedah, Rosh Hashanah. So Yitzchak had two birthdays. Birthday number one for the birthday for the time he was born. And birthday number two had got Nochamola birthday. The birthday fun, the reincarnation, the reconstitution, Pocho Nishmosei, and Neshama came back. When was that? In Akedah Yitzchak. When Akedah Yitzchak? Rosh Hashanah. Zogt, Rashi steht shenekad al gabe hamizbeach, vehoyo oviv roitzel l'shochtoi, niftechu hashamayim, v'ro maloch hashores, v'yo boichim, v'yordu dimoiseim, v'noflu aneinov, lefichach kol einov kedei sheyitel Yankev es habroches. So on the birthday party, from the reincarnation, from the Tzveite Mol, the blind givon, why did he become blind? I mean, blind he became because in order, Rashi, Zogar Rashi, lefichach kol einov kedei sheyitel Yankev es habroches. When is Yankov getting the brachas? On the birthday party. And the Zelbe Nacht for Rosh Hashanah, as steht in Goyen, as steht in Zohar. On the night of Rosh Hashanah, he's getting the brachas on his second birthday, on the reincarnation birthday. And from there, with the ganze Zach that he's getting the reason why he's getting blind is because she yikach es habrachos, and for there yikach es habrachos, and that this is mamish on the birthday of the Yen Nacht. He's getting the brachas. We eat tapuach b'dvash, and this is the birthday of the Yortzeit from the Akedah and Yitzhak, which took place years before, either 86 years before or 97 years before. Move fast to the next one, 114 years after the Akedah, Hashem pokad es Rochel. Rochel was Hakoro, and why did she get Hashem pokad es Rochel? Was sie given Hashem pokad es Rochel? So we know the story that she came to Lovan, Givus the Tata is a Schwindler, gave Simonim to Rochel, Rochel Mosro Simonim Lachis. She gave the Simonim Lachis not to be Mevaze her sister. Steht the Medrash, Hamoyer Dike Medrash, we give in the Medrash, we spoke about it on the 9 days. Anybody there heard this year on the 9 days? Hoishiv Lovan Esleo Ba'apiryon. He was Moishiv Rochel Ba'apiryon. Chuppah was before Shkia. So you put Rochel Ba'apiryon, it was still light outside. Ukshehechshich, Hoirido B'godeo, Umasortom Lelea Shel Levaish Esachis. She took off her white collar gown. She gave it to the sister. Yankev, once it's going to be Machshich, the Chuppah, he just saw the collar sitting on the collar chair. Stayed Klal Yisrael, went to Galus, and there was Chuban Beis Rishon, Nebuchadnezzar takes him. And steht doch Bo kol ha'ovas lifnei melech malcha amlochim v'yinichu p'tchino. Ha'om choto b'aveda selulim, and Bo Avrom, Kodesh Baruch Hu threw him out, Yitzchok, Yankev, ad shebo rochel. Omo lefonov, Ribono Shel Olam, golu v'yadua sheYaakov oved b'shvili 7 shonim. וכששום ראשונים והגיע נישואי, החליף וסחויסי בי, ואמרתי ליענקב וקובסי בינינו סימונים. וניחמו רחמי על החויסי ומסרתי הסימונים, והרי הדבורים קו וחומר. ומה אני שאין לבוסו ודום אופה ואיפה לא כינסי והחויסי, עתו שינכו מלך חי וקיו מפני מה כינסי בה ודזורו שאין בו ממש, ושלחת אסבוני להורג בחרב, ומסרתום ביד אויבים לעשס ברצונו, נסגלו רב כמו לקודש ברוך הוא ואומר, כל ברום הנשמון היא בכי תמרורים, ושובו בונים לגבורם. This is all happening, according to Rashi, the Shvangert, the Nacht. The same way Sarah got pregnant on Leil Rosh Hashanah, so too Rochel gets pregnant on Leil Rosh Hashanah. Let's move fast forward. Yosef HaTzadik, 30 years later, Beis Hamikdash from Reish Chavtes, Yosef goes to jail. He's 12 years in jail. The night of Rosh Hashanah, he's being called upon to get out of jail. Why does he get out of jail? What's the Schai gets out of jail? Steht in Brias Haolam Rabba when Yankov meets with Esav after he runs away from Lavan. So Yosef was tall. How tall is Yosef? According to Chaim Kanievsky, he was 1.87 m. I'm not getting involved. 1.87 m is approximately on or about 6'4", 6'3.5". That's it. Rochel given a kleinchike. Steht she given Ktsaras Ktsoro. Leah was Arucho more and Leah was Ktsoro. So when Esav came, she was a beautiful woman. He was afraid that Esav had zuchappen the mame zayne. So he stood in front of her, and he was master. Rochel was standing behind him. She was a kleinchike. Yosef was master. Omar Kodesh Baruch Hu. Ato roimamto koimoscho. Lahastir simcho. Ani aroimem koimoscho. La'escho l'mishno l'melech. Kodesh Baruch Hu makes him mishno l'melech. When does that happen? That happens on Leil Rosh Hashanah. Fun Shnas Beis Alofim Reish Chavtes 2229, 30 years later. Move weiter. You know, somebody would ask you, Klal Yisrael worked in Mitzrayim, Vifel Yom Zegarbet in Mitzrayim. Everybody knows, Redu, 210 years. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, Daf Yud Aleph, state that the Shibud was Posak on Rosh Hashanah. The people of the Pasuk Rosh Hashanah, they didn't go out till 6.5 months later to Leil Pesach. But by Rosh Hashanah, Pasuk Hashibus, the Gemara Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara talks about No, the always. I want to tell you something. I'm going to tell you now a chiddush that you didn't know. I told you why you eat apple with vash. Favos blos min shefer Rosh Hashana. Why do we blow shefer? Steht a posuk in Tehillim, few psukim. Tiku b'chodesh shefer b'kesel yom chagenu ki choik l'Yisrael lu mishpat le'lekei Yankev Eidus b'Yehoisef Somoy b'Tzeisa l'Eretz Mitzrayim Sfas le'yodati eshmo Hasiroisi misevel shichmoy kapov midud ta'avono b'tzoro korose v'achaltzecho e'encho b'sesera mevchon chalmei merivo Zog the Radak. Tell you over Radak. Zog the Radak. Quoting. Venire ki ze ta'am mitzvah satrua b'Rosh Hashanah lefi shebot lo aveiseinu ma'aveidosum v'nochu mi'yigiyosum b'yom ze והתרוע הוא סימון שילוח עבודים כמו שציווה הקדוש ברוך הוא תקיע שפר ביום כיפור של יובל שהיה סימון לשילוח עבודים וצייסו מרשוס אדיניהם כן ציוו הקדוש ברוך הוא לתקוע בשפר בראש השנה כי ביום זה בוטל לעבודה והיו תחילס חירויסאים. So you eat apple because the brachas of Yankov Avinu at ongishmet from the Reach HaSodeh and you blow shofar because that's a symbol, Posach HaShibud. In Leil Rosh Hashanah was Posach, and Yom Rosh Hashanah was Posach HaShibud, and when the Avodim go out the Chayris, you blow a horn. Tiko b'choy the shofar, Hazevi Yom Kippur for Yovel. You blow the shofar because that's a symbol of going out the Chayris. Let's move 384 years later. State Elkanah has two wives, Chana and Pnina. He's married 19 years. Chana Ishkin Kinder. I would like to go through all the, so I'm going to make Katza. She was Oil Regel. Steht in Radak, Bois and Ayomim, to be Oil Regel 5 times. The Oil Regel also on Rosh Hashanah. They came on Rosh Hashanah, Yomim Yomimo, there was Aliyah, Shaila is Bechlal, Shaila, Ramban is a Sofak Alter, if there is a mitzvah Aliyah Regel, Mishkan Shile, could be it's only Beis Hamikdash, Mishkan Shile, is there a mitzvah Aliyah Regel? Gmor steht doch in Makis, Mosa Yom Muzoken Zeh, and we'll be zeicher to Allah Zalif. I say there was no man mitzvah, the Ramban is mistapek, and Radak state klor, the oil regel. She came that night, Zel Berashi, that night, Chana was nifkan. Vaychshaveh leil l'shikoyre, she was mispalo, she was matris klapi malo, I can't say sugis agmor in broches, you learn out a lot of dinim from tefillas Chana. But Lamaise, she got pregnant, the Zel Benacht. Soro, Rochel, and Chano, nifkedu beleil Rosh Hashanah. Let's go to the last one. Ezra Sefer. Move further 583 years later. Gimel Alofim Tov Yud Gimel 34:13 Brias Haolam. Ezra Sefer Yerushalayim, talking about 70 years after Galus, Bavel. Ezra comes the Chosh and the massacre. They're coming to rebuild Yerushalayim. He comes to Eretz Yisrael. He sees that's Brochen, that's Shoshan and Kehila. They're all married to Shiktzes, Moyavias, Edomias, Mitzrias, Sidonias, as they state now, Psukim. He went, he took, on Rosh Hashanah, he built a beautiful Bimas Eitz. He took 12 Elachiden. Weil nicht getroffen mehr, steht in Medrash. V'lo imotza elo 12. Shisha besad Yemin, v'shisha besad Smoil. He put on the Bima, and 6 hours, you want to know how long Rosh Hashanah davening given by Ezra Sefer. Complaining till 1 o'clock. 6 hours. Roshei Shana. And he told them, he started saying everybody has to throw out their wives from the house. And after everybody started crying, and he tells them, Lechu, ichlu mashmanim, shtu mamtakim, v'shilchu mones, da mishlach mones of Rosh Hashanah. And ki kodesh hayom la'Hashem, ve'al te'otzu, ki chedvas Hashem hi ma'uzchem. Ganze Shailish, Akasai, have to eat Bosser and Rosh Hashanah, they did Simcha in Rosh Hashanah, Chedvas Hashem Ma'uzchem. We know there's a mitzvah, Simcha Samachtem Chagechu, and Regalim, Rosh Hashanah, is there a mitzvah Achilas Bosser or not? Rambam's Loshen, Hilchas Yontiv, Vaystois, so there a mitzvah Simcha for Rosh Hashanah as well. But I'm not getting involved. This is all happening on Rosh Hashanah. They'll mekabel to do tshuva. That's the first time, Mimois Yeshua Binun State, Lo Yikimu Sukkos, first time they built Sukkos, the beautiful Chag HaSukkos. And on Chovdala Tishrei, 3 days afterwards, Ezra shechted the Yetzer Hara from Avodah Zorah, Achiyosa Petek min Hashamayim, there was a settle, Ikumen from Hashamayim, Chisomer Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu Emes, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was masking with the Shechita